My dad, as a young kid, he explained to me about having, just like I have a coach for wrestling, I need a coach for the game of life. And he talked to me about Jesus and why wouldn't I want the coach that's going to win the game in the end. And so I was real fortunate as a young kid to make that decision to follow Jesus and make him the Lord of my life. And that was a real important thing for me because I was hit with some challenges when I got a little bit older in high school. My all-American family, my parents split up, and that was a real tough time for me. And really, that faith kind of became my own. And shortly after that, a year or so later, I was in a motorcycle accident. It was an accident where I had a compound skull fracture with severe lacerations of the brain. It was one of those accidents you're not supposed to live from. In fact, later on, a doctor told my parents the longest he'd ever heard from somebody living from the types of brain traumas I had was about 30 minutes. I had the foot peg went in my head, pieces of my skull were in the center of my brain. My brother was actually behind me in a car with my coach. We were going to practice when I got in the motorcycle accident. I was riding on the back of a friend's motorcycle, and we got in that wreck. My brother was behind me in the car, and he said it looked like my head was brain was falling out, and he took pushed the bike away from me to try and protect me, and then wrapped a shirt around my head just trying to hold it together. The police report says at the scene of the accident, there was a third cup of brain matter that was left at the scene of the accident. So it was an accident where you're not supposed to live from. But the crazy thing is, God had a different plan for my life. And as opposed to dying, they got my parents to the hospital as quickly as they could because they were going to try and sign my body parts away because there's no way I was going to live. God had something different planned for me than what the doctors thought was supposed to happen. I remember when I was laying there in the hospital one time, it was kind of the real hard time for me. When I was trying to scratch my arm was a tough one. Another time, my brother brought me in. They had done a newspaper article about me, and I was reading about, all my great things I'd done in wrestling, and then it said, now he's an invalid. And that kind of caught me off guard. I didn't realize, I was paralyzed on the left side of my body, and I was laying in a bed, and it kind of changed that perspective a lot. And at that point, I wasn't Joe the wrestler anymore. I wasn't this great thing. I was just an invalid in a hospital bed. And at that time, no doubt, my faith in God, that's what got me through it, that strength it gave me and to be able to come back. And I always thought, well, I'm not supposed to be alive. The doctors have no clue why I'm talking, why I'm alive. I know God's plan is for me to win an Olympic championship. And that was my thought for years. I had to go to an extra year of high school, which I don't recommend. I redshirted in high school, so I had to go to an extra year. Then I went to college and wrestled in college, and I was always the backup. I never got the lower part of my leg back, so that's why I limp now, and I can't move my ankle or toes, so it kind of made it real hard to wrestle. But I came back and wrestled in high school, went from, state champion, national champion, to a backup on my team, and crazy enough, a coach recruited me for college. So I went and wrestled at the University of Minnesota, and I was always a backup there. I never actually won a varsity match in college, but I always thought that whole time, it's like, well, God has me here, and I know the reason God has me or why I lived is so I can win an Olympic championship, and that'll be the great story that God wants out of this. And that didn't happen, and that's, at the time, I was trying everything to try and figure it out, and I tried everything so I'd have no regrets when I got to be an old guy like I am now, but I know God's got a purpose for me, and it was just, what is that? And I found coaching, and I know I can relate to guys as the guys that win national titles because I've done that, or the guys that win, I won age group world titles, but on that stage, so I can relate to those guys, but I can also relate to the guy who's the bench warmer, the worst guy on the team, because I was that guy as well. And I think that's really helped me as a coach. And, instead of me winning an Olympic championship, I think my job now is to help guys win Olympic titles, and that's one reason I'm here. And I've also been able to share with other people going through accidents where they're not supposed to live or where they're not, supposed to make it through, and I can give them hope, the hope that Jesus gave me when I was going through mine. And that's been something was like, maybe God's got me here to talk to Richard Perry and Gina Perry and help them through that time, or God's got me here to talk to another wrestler who's going through a difficult time. So there's definitely a purpose why I'm here. It's not medically explainable, so it's definitely God's plan, not man's plan. I think it's easy for us as people or as wrestlers to get caught up in our identity. And it really, wrestling is not who you are, it's just what you do. And I think for young people as we're going through this, if we're focused on the wins and losses, we're focused on being the greatest or the all-star, that's the wrong focus. Our focus is to see how good we can get, to see what kind of person, how much we can learn from wrestling. There's a lot of great biblical principles that we can learn through wrestling. And if you're learning those things, that's a great thing. So don't get caught up in the wins and losses. Don't get caught up on what somebody else is doing. Just give it to God, give your best effort, go out there and do great things. And as long as you're loving God and you're loving others, you're doing the right thing. And you know, man, don't lose your focus. Focus on the right things. What's your why for wrestling? And if it's winning, then you need to refocus and try and look at other things, because our identity is so much more. And God can use us, whether we're the Olympic champion or we're the guy who's riding the pines. You know, He'll use all of us for His purpose. Whether as a coach or as a wrestler, try and make it to where other people want you around. You know, you may not be the guy who's gonna get the pin in every duel and score 16 points for your team, but maybe you're the guy who will encourage somebody on the bench, or maybe you're the guy to do something to help somebody to grow. So where's your value come from? You know, your value comes from God. A lot of times we get our perspective messed up and then we think it comes from, you know, I'm the guy that wins the match. It's not necessarily true. What's God's plan for you, and where can you be valuable to help others using His plan? So your value, it doesn't have to be that you're the greatest of all time. Your value comes in bringing God's purpose to your team, bringing God's purpose to other people's lives. If I could model what Jesus did, even on a small scale, then I think I've done my job as a coach.